Okay, we'll get started. This is the subcommittee on the Family Court Committee on GALs and parenting coordinators. So with respect to GALs, I had a couple of questions that I needed answered. I was going to email Judge Ashley, which I hadn't yet. One of the questions is on specification of the charge of the GAL. Are they specific? Are they gray areaed? I understand there's no recommendation, but are they specific? Are the judges specific as to what they're looking for this GAL to deliver in a report? And the other one was with respect to mental health or substance use. Hi.
Yes, they are. They are charged to have a specific issue. Yes,
Yeah.
it is. Come on.
So, and with respect to mental health and substance use, are there clinicians used for determining? I know the court that I visited. They're one of the parties was supposed to get evaluated on their own. That didn't happen. The judge gave another 3 months for this person to get evaluated, which I found problematic because he had 3 months and he didn't do it.
Right.
There was another 3 months given, and the party was getting visitations, and the other party was concerned with his alcohol use. And it was, that he was given another 3 months to see the child. I would have thought that it was, okay, the visitation's over until you come back in 3 months and we have a substance use evaluation. So it appears that there's not, that it's up to the party, that in this case, the judge left it up to the party for that party to get themselves evaluated, which I'm not sure if any of them would use a clinician and say, set up an appointment with this person, and when you come back, we're expecting a report, evaluation. So, yeah, yeah.
Good morning, Representative. Just for record purposes, Erin Cregan, General Counsel for the courts. Thank you for these questions. One of the things I have to say is that I am the general counsel, so I am not as expert in each of the subject matters as some of our judges, like Judge
What was your
Ashley.
name again? I'm sorry.
Erin Cregan.
Aaron.
But I will be happy to get you these questions and any others that you have and have the judges write them for you. But as a general matter, people do find their own clinicians. There could be different considerations, cost, locality for them. If the court were very restrictive in who they could use, that it could be an expensive person or someone who's far. So there is a little flexibility there. But I think that the courts are very receptive to your inquiry into whether there is a way to provide more mental health expertise for the courts. Unfortunately, a lot of these things are at people's own cost. And that's just the money that we have is not available for those services. So it's certainly something worth looking into.
Okay. So when a judge orders a alcohol evaluation, that's on the person to pay for that evaluation.
Typically, yes.
Okay. And the person that it's ordered on doesn't have the option of saying, I don't have any money, so I don't know how I'm going to get that done.
They can submit financial affidavits, but there are not a lot of funds that are dedicated. You think of something like, for example, the GAL fund the Guardian Ad Litem fund has not been funded. I'm not sure when it was last funded, but it hasn't been funded for a number of years. So there would have to be a specific fund that the court could draw from to cover a particular cost that the person could then submit a financial affidavit and show that they're eligible based on criteria that the legislature sets.
But there is no funding for any of that.
I'll check if there's any circumstance, whether in a particular case it would be covered out of an existing fund.
Okay.
But I know that there's not a dedicated fund for that.
Okay, any other questions anybody may have?
No, I just noticed after going, I'm Judy Lenza. Basically, I noticed that when I did go to court with listening in, that it seemed like a lot of people had problems finding a spot to go to where they could go to get the mental health or their evaluations. And that is where I think it definitely, if they're going to be that they need to go to these, there has to be some places that are going to accept these because that's the only way to move forward in order to get them the proper evaluations that they need. Because otherwise, I mean, how are they going to get the assistance that they're going to need?
Go ahead.
Do you know if, sorry, Representative Gregg, do you know if the GALs, they're attorneys? From what I'm seeing, it's attorneys.
I don't know if they're always attorneys. I would have to check on that. I think that's frequently the case.
Okay, Representative Katab has actually put in a bill that I'm interested in that we're going to be looking at this year, but it really talks about rather than only having an attorney doing it, especially whenever we have these nuances of that go beyond the legal realm and they're more in the mental health realm, but actually where it is somebody that would hold a bachelor's, master's, or doctorate degree in psychology, law, social work, counseling, or be a family practitioner, so that there's a wider range of what we're looking for. I mean, I guess, is that something that we will just discuss this bill when it comes up? I assume this would come up
Right.
before us. So I certainly, that's the direction I've always been headed in since we first heard about the GAL here, that I'm concerned about. Basically, so somebody that might need more legal help is not somebody that can afford a GAL anyway, because they might be more pro se. So I guess, do I even have a question? Do you know how often the GALs are used currently?
I think they're frequently requested, but they're frequently not able to be afforded by the
Okay.
parties. So there's many cases in which they're discussed as an option, but it's just not possible for them to afford to have one appointed.
Yeah, we heard two cases. Representative Lanza and I actually went to the courts together, and we heard two cases where they requested it but were unable to afford it.
So do we have data on how many are requested and due to financing they're not provided? It'd be helpful to know what the court's needs are that aren't being met with respect to GALs, whether the judge would want the GAL to help determine something, and because of finances, it's not available. So,
I don't think we have a system whereby a person is necessarily putting it in a case tracking system where I could go and pull a report. But what I could see is the last time that the fund was funded, how much the draw was when the
Okay.
Guardian Ad Litem Fund was funded. That might give you a pretty good idea
okay,
of what the interest is.
good.
Can we file anything with like that would have a budget type thing, or does that have to wait till next year? Because I'm really interested in trying to get this funded for indigent families again.
Yeah, it would be difficult in the off year to
Yeah.
get funding because we went through the budget, so.
So it's be something
Probably
that
would
we'd
be
have to look at
something that-
next session.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think I already asked this, but I'm not sure if I got an answer. Are there times where the judges will specify you need to go, you need a mental health evaluation, and you need to go to Manchester, Greater Manchester Mental Health for that evaluation? Or Or will the judge just say, you know, I'd like to have you get a mental health evaluation and you're on your own?
I think it is, I will check that for you, but I think it is typically not specified exactly where to go.
Okay.
But I will check that for you and make sure that that's accurate.
Okay. And I think that would be helpful, last time that we did have a fund for GALs, how quickly that fund, would, decrease. I remember years ago when they had that fund, that was always that issue. You know, we're down to 1,500 or 1,800. So that'll take us 3 or 4 more, and we have another 6 months to go or what have you. So that would be interesting. Yeah, and also with respect to the parenting coordinator, do the judges feel that that would have the potential of reducing conflict? Have the potential of, parties coming to conclusions? I'd be anxious to know if, you know, they sense this would happen.
One of the things I think is tough for the judges in answering the question is they know the New Hampshire system very well, and sometimes they're not necessarily as familiar with what may have been successful in another state. There are certainly a smaller number of high conflict cases that take up a lot of the court's time because they have to, for everyone to have their opportunity to be heard. I think it's hard for the practitioners, the judges, to know this will be the thing that changes that because they don't have direct experience. Whereas
Sure.
someone working in another state might say, yes, this has been very successful, or it has not been as successful as hoped when we implemented this system. It's certainly something that they're interested in, and I think it's good. They definitely are interested in solving some of these issues and giving more services to people in high conflict cases. But it's tough to project whether this would be the thing that would help reduce that conflict versus neutral case evaluations versus the mediator with a different background. I think that's not something that they have necessarily studied, but certainly want to give more services in high conflict cases.
So is it fair to say that it would it would relieve the judges of some issues having somebody to help them? Because if there's no parental coordinator, the judge is doing that. Or if trying to affect that, to bring less, conflict. So the fact that they have somebody that could help them with that, on its face looks, whether or not we know it's going to accomplish the goals that we're looking for it to accomplish is yet to be seen. But the cases that I heard, it was overwhelming. I felt for a judge to have to deal with a lot of pro se's that he's dealing with, and they're not, they're not in any rush. It appeared to me, in my opinion, was they weren't in any rush to fixing anything. They were comfortable in the conflict, and the judge was looking. In my case, the judge was looking to reduce that. So having another person helping in that, on its face would seem welcoming.
It is certainly worth exploring, and I don't think that the judges would say no to more resources for cases that do take up a lot of court time and which are important to resolve correctly.
Okay, so just in looking at the case text for what the idea or the updated case text, which is section GAL 50302, it looks like New Hampshire Code. It talks about that what the guardian ad litem is probably initially assigned to do, but one of the things is to come to an independent conclusion about what's in the best interest of the recipient. But we now have legislation where they cannot make a recommendation. Is that so? I'm almost looking at it's the current ramifications we have or restrictions we have. I'm just wondering how effective this actually is because they can. So it says that they formulate a recommendation, which they can't do now, or such other report as directed by the appointing court. So really, they're an investigator for the court. That's all they are, and they're just looking into things, kind of a PI kind of thing for the court. Is that what I'm understanding?
They certainly have an investigative role, which is they're seen as an extension of the court, the time that the court's not able to necessarily give to look into all of these matters independently. So I think that's a fair characterization.
Okay. I mean, I would say with the current restrictions on a GAL funding that, or saying that, I guess I just don't see it being as successful right now. I see more hangups with it because of their limitations and their backgrounds and stuff. I don't know, actually. Even if somebody, say they can't afford it, but we assign it to them, besides just being an investigative tool, I'm not sure the benefit, the way that it currently sits.
Right.
I mean, I don't know about you, but
What would be interesting also is, of the GALs appointed, how many of them are one party's paying or they're splitting? That would be interested to know too. To see how many are, one-sided. To know how many are dropped because nobody has the finances, how many one side pays and how many both sides split.
I may have to obtain an anecdotal estimate on that for you, but
Okay.
I'll see what I
Yeah,
can.
that would be fine. That would be fine. And, and what I'm understanding is it's specific, when there's a GAL appointed, it's to look for a specific issue that the judge needs to know.
Typically, it's an assignment from the judge to the guardian ad litem to look into a delineated issue or issues and report back to the court.
Okay. So it's not as wide as, you're charged with reporting to me the best interest of the child.
I
which
have
would
not
be wide open.
seen one that broad. It is
Okay.
typically more targeted, but I will check that there's not a scenario in which you would have, for example, like a catch-all at the end where you'd say, I want you to look into all these items and let me know if you encounter anything else that relates to best interests.
Okay. And is there a time frame that they're given? So let's say the next hearing is in 2 months. Is the GAL expected to report within that time frame for the next hearing? Do you know?
I think it might vary case by case because some of the investigations may be very easy and simple and some may take longer for one reason or another. So it may vary between case, whether it's a shorter assignment or a larger one.
Okay. And at the hearing, each party can object or question the report of the GAL.
Absolutely.
Are they told that? Do you know? Did the judges tell them that, or do they have to automatically know? So if a GAL gives a report that's not very good to one party, could that party interject, or not interject, but say, I disagree with X, Y, Z, and for whatever reason why? And are they told that if they don't agree with the GAL's report, can we, feel, you're okay with letting us know why and the reason why you don't believe it's correct?
I think they get it in writing. They get a sort of just
So they get a copy.
a copy of the report and sort of general information, but let me see if I can look at the writing and see exactly what's written in it.
Yeah, with the high pro se uses, I think the more that they're told, the more it's less apt to be confusing or leave after a hearing saying, I didn't agree with what the GAL said, and, I don't know if I had an opportunity to dispute it. I just wanted to be clear that they know, they could dispute it. And I mean, this data's probably not kept, but, the determination of the GAL, what percentage would lean towards the person paying? I know in children and family law for years, we hear about, the GAL lean towards, my ex because they were paying. So I'm wondering if there's some way to know, it was fair to both parties, or it leaned towards one party and that party happened to be the payer. Because my understanding is there's a set limit, a set amount, a price, however, it could be extended. So if I'm a GAL and I'm looking for the income, I know I got $600. However, I could get another $600 if, because the person that's paying me can afford it. If I leave something in my report that the judge could extend me for another $600 or whatever the costs are, I don't know how often the extensions are, I guess would be, how often are there extensions, for another report from the GAL?
I know that is not a perception that the judges have. It is not necessarily measured,
right.
but typically because they're giving sort of their factual findings, there's not as much room. If the findings aren't robust, then they're not persuasive to the judge. So even if you were trying to weight it, it would be difficult to do. So I know that that's not the judge's perception right now, that they see a bias from guardians ad litem, but I will certainly see if there's data. I don't think so, because it's just not sort of tracked in that way. It's in our different case files, but not necessarily in a way we could pull out to
right.
run a report. But I know that is not the judge's perception.
Right. Okay. Any other questions or? Representative? So I think that's all I had. You got a lot of homework there.
That's all right. I'm
but-
going to go.
yeah.
Thank you for giving them to me, because there's a few different people I want to check with to make sure I get everything. So it is helpful for me to have all your questions so I can check with all the different offices in the court, circuit administrators, different judges, and make sure I get you a full picture. So I appreciate you giving me the questions to
'Cause
take back.
I'm starting to lean towards, we were better off when we had the funding. That made it fair for everybody, and it helped the judge. The cases that I heard, with pro se's, there was 4 cases, 8 litigants, and, 1 attorney for all, in one of the cases. And I'm like, the judge has no court help. Like when I was going through divorces back in the 80s, so I see the strain on the judge. So it was, especially when you get a conflict, it's more difficult to peel the onion to get to the bottom of the facts. Those answers would be very helpful. And yeah, do we really got to think about putting a line item, for, GALs back in? And I believe it was Judge Ashley that said that the average was 120 to 130 an hour.
I believe I remember that was a similar number.
Okay. And if they're attorneys, I'm thinking that's at the lower end of, if I hire an attorney on a deal, it's probably 200, 250, 350, 300, right? So the 130, I'm wondering if is that enough to get enough interest?
That is a good question because we are in a nationwide labor shortage. So it
Right.
is harder to get people for things that we could have gotten them for in the past. They're in demand in other places. So I think that's our average cost now, but that's a good question. If we expanded it, would we be able to attract enough people at that price? And we may not know the answer, but I can certainly see if we have any information one way or the other that we do know people that we think would be interested, or many of those people have moved on, they're not available anymore. I'll see if we know that.
Are there any GALs that volunteer their services, or is it all under payment? There's no pro bono GALs.
I'm not certain if there is, I know someone in the audience is correctly mentioning that CASA does make themselves available on a
Right,
volunteer
for
basis
Abuse and neglect cases only, yeah.
for many things. There may be attorneys that do it as pro bono. I'm not certain of that, but typically pro bono for an attorney would be, maybe a week or two a year. So it may not be, we just may not have a bar that's large enough and interested in this particular
Right.
subject. And also, you do typically want folks that are well-trained, that understand the area very well. Whereas if someone is only coming and doing it for a week or two a year, that might not be someone that becomes a go-to for the judges to appoint because they're just not doing it every day with lots of training and lots of knowledge in the area.
And I'm wondering if GALs are your new attorneys, those that just passed the bar, or if there's a good array of experience versus someone who just started.
That's a good question. I'll look into that. I think many judges do appoint someone that they've seen before and have
Right.
confidence in, but there are always new people entering. So that's a good question, what our balance is.
Okay. Any other questions?
I would just like to say, I think they definitely need to make sure that they're trained well. And I think also too, that they need to make sure, because the biggest thing is, as we know, the work shortage is a big problem out there. And I know within the court system, I heard them speaking to, I went to the Concord Court, and they said, it's hard to even get people in to work. And so I think we need to make sure that if we're doing this, this is a very important for the cases, that we need to make sure that somehow these people need to be, paid appropriately, because it is especially if the judges are going to want this, and as well as, I think they need to make sure that they compensate them well, because just like everything, I said somewhere or another, I'm noticing throughout, we know it's a work shortage throughout. I'm talking to so many people
Right.
throughout the court system, not only court system, but at the jail system, police departments. Everybody is looking for, looking for employees. People are leaving left and right, and we need to somehow find some kind of solution for this, because I know myself as a nurse, we have a lot of people, even within the healthcare system, that's also, but we need somehow to find an answer to some of this. And, but like I said, this is so important, especially for the court system to move forward and everything too.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I also agree that that this is incredibly important. I think the more we get into even society, the complication of cases and what we're looking at, and the psychology, I would like to see, and it doesn't look like there's any restriction on who can be a GAL. It just happens to be, I think, more lawyers or stuff, but encouraging people from other pertinent pertinent parts of the workforce that might help with this too. But I think the biggest thing is I think the ones that need this the most are probably the ones that can't afford it. So I do think that that's something we definitely need to look at. And we also heard from the judge that that would be like her one big like wish list that that they would have, is to be able to provide this to people. So I do think that we have a lot of work, and as a as legislators, I think we have a strong responsibility to try to make sure that we can get this in the hands of the people that really need it. So,
Erin, can you spell your last name for me?
Cregan, Creegan.
Great.
From the Irish for heart, rather than, I
Cregan,
think,
yeah.
there's a German spelling, but I'm Irish rather than German. But I have cards. I'll give you cards so you have.
Okay, and do you have Christina, our
Yes.
staff, so you could send whatever?
I have
whatever
typically been
answers you
sending
get?
it to her so she can distribute it to you. Right.
And I,
Thank you so much.
and I know we next meet, I think he's looking at the first week in November to get this committee, the full committee, back up, which we'll be reporting our findings. So, thank you, Aaron.
Great. And if you have any other questions you think of, just let me know and
Okay.
I'll hunt down the right
Sure.
person to answer them and
Fantastic.
get you expertise more expert than my own.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you so much for your time.
Okay, any other area? I think we pretty much got it covered.
Yeah, I think so.
Very good.
Perfect.
Okay, we'll, I'll
Bring your pen, as we talked about, yeah.
call a closing of this hearing, this subcommittee hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.